Welcome back. It is day 3, training number 3 of the Diet Rebellion. And I'm so excited to be able to do this last and final training with you all listening. Now, many of you started this series with a goal to be able to get some sort of results, right? You want to lose fat, improve your body confidence, increase muscle mass, improve your relationship with food. So let me kind of quickly catch you up on where we've been, and then we'll talk about what we're going to go forward to into tomorrow or today. So in training 1, if you remember all the way back to last Thursday, we talked about how if you want to get the results that you're desiring, you need 2 things. Do you remember what they were? The right tool and the right mindset. And I exposed this trap that's been keeping a lot of you stuck for some of you for years, this compliance defiance pendulum, where you either follow someone else's rules and that pressure builds up of restriction and finally the soda bottle explodes, and then you rebel against it and you feel out of control when it comes to food. Either way, on either end of that pendulum, you are not the decision maker in your own life. And so then we went a little deeper in training 2, and we started to talk about, okay, that's the wrong mindset and the wrong tool. What about the right one? So we talked about the tool of macro counting and how it really allows you to work with your brain and also with your body to be able to fuel your body in a way that gets you the results that you desire. And then we talked about how we need to pair that with the right mindset, because a lot of women approach macro counting and they bring that diet mentality into it. And it just becomes another diet. It puts them back on that compliance defiance pendulum that we're trying so desperately hard to get off. So then we dove into that and we talked about how we need to become a scientist, right? We talked about the scientist mindset. We need to bring this mindset into macro counting, where we are using logic instead of emotion to make decision. We talked about moving away from judgment and into curiosity and experimentation so that we can figure out what is going to work for our black box. We all have a black box of a body that we're carrying around, and we gotta figure it out. We gotta pair with our body, and macro counting with the right mindset can be the tool that helps you do that. But here's what I know about you. You didn't just show up to these trainings to learn more. You showed up because you want some sort of transformation. And you know that transformation doesn't just require learning, you have to actually apply it. And so that's why today I'm putting it all together into the application piece, the step-by-step process of how do we actually step into that identity of the macro scientist? How do we work with our brain and with our body to be able to get results? How do we make decisions from data and not from drama? Because data, my friends, teaches you how your body works so that you can pair with your body and make decisions that serve you and serve your goals so that you can finally hit them. Because when you use the tool of macro counting and you pair it with the mindset of a scientist, that is the difference between a tool that controls you and a tool that really gives you the freedom that you desire. Okay, if you remember all the way back to training 1, do you remember me talking about pouring out your cup? Right, what was I saying when I said that? I was asking you to release expectations about what you are going to learn, because my biggest breakthroughs in my life have come when someone has taught me something I didn't know that I didn't know, when they highlighted one of my blind spots. So even though a lot of you came to these trainings with expectations about what you wanted me to teach or what you wanted to learn from me, my guess is that what you've actually learned over the last 2 trainings has been much more valuable. And it's starting to click into place why you haven't seen success in the past and what needs to change, because change is required if you want new results in order for you to see those results in the future. Because we've said it before, I'll say it again, nothing changes if nothing changes. Learning is great. I love teaching. You get all these aha moments. But there's a massive difference between learning something and applying it to your very real and your very messy life. So today I'm going to start talking about the doing piece. I'm going to start talking about how do we actually put this into practice piece, the 5-step piece. And then learning the steps in today's training is half of the battle. But after you learn the steps, then comes the messy application piece, right? This is where a lot of people get stuck. It's like when I watched my parents drive as a kid, it didn't seem that hard. And then I did my written driver's ed at my high school, and I was like, dude, I got this. Driving is easy. And then I freaking got in the car for the first time, and boy, was it a lot harder than I actually thought. And I was really glad that I had my driver's ed instructor sitting in the passenger seat so that I didn't have to do this alone. So today's training is going to be a lot like driver's ed. You're going to have the steps that you want to be taking next. And then you're going to go out onto the road of real life. And if you want my support with that messy part, that application piece, I will talk about how I can help you inside of Macros 101 at the end of the training. Sound fair? Okay, good, because this is what I'm good at. I'm good at helping my clients master the tool of macro counting, figure out their body, work alongside and pair with their body to get the results, and helping them to rewire their mindset so that the results and the tool actually happen. That's what creates breakthrough in my clients. Okay, last training, I talked and showed a lot of physical transformations. Shared a lot of people who, you look at them and you see a physical transformation, and that can happen when you combine macro counting with the mindset of a scientist. You saw you can lose fat, you can gain muscle, you can improve your physique, you can improve your confidence. Sometimes it's a little harder to see the internal transformation, but it doesn't make it any less beneficial to your life. Speaking kinder to yourself, having less anxiety around food, improving your relationship with the scale. So this actually happened in real time, and I want to share a little bit of the internal transformation of one of my clients named Teresa. She was a Macros 101 client. She joined last year, and she's continued in our coaching program beyond Macros 101. And she actually, after the first training, put this up in our community. And I just loved how she was able to see the internal work that she's done over the last year. And I think sometimes it's really hard for us to see ourselves change. We just don't see it. It's hard for us to put a finger onto it. But she was able to eloquently say so much what is different this year versus last year. So she recognized after training one that she was the type of person that loved it when someone just handed her a plan and told her what to eat. She's like, that's my jam. And then she had the aha that that's why she could never handle herself when she was off plan. And then she said the soda bottle analogy really stood out to her where you just restrict, shake the soda bottle, and then it eventually explodes. And she said, over the last year, I've learned to say no to many things, but I've also learned to say yes to so many things because I can. And she said, I can honestly count on one hand over the last year how many times my soda bottle has exploded, which is incredibly different than when she came to me, when that was happening very, very frequently for her. And my favorite, I said in that training, if you remember, I said, you've never seen macro counting taught the way that I taught it. And she said, Amber, I've never seen anything in the health and fitness space presented like you present it. I knew deciding to follow you was going to help my relationship with food tremendously, and it has. And she recognizes that she is learning to make her own decisions. She's learning to drive her own car. She's learning to trust herself and trust herself around food. And she said, like a marriage, it's going to be a relationship I have to work at, but now I have the tools and the growing mindset to do it. And the reason that I'm sharing this is because I think, again, I talk so much about both. And I think this is something that really sets the way that I approach things apart. And we're going to talk about this today. I'm going to give you a lot of tools and understanding about the physical transformation, because nutrition is important, working out is important, what you do is important, what you eat is important. Like, all those things are really important to create a physical transformation that a lot of you desire. And there's the mindset piece, because if you want that physical transformation to last, we have to have both. So that's what I'm going to really be diving into today. How do you actually become that macro scientist? How do you get the physical and the mental transformation that is going to allow you to create the results that you want? There are 5 steps, and I'm going to walk you through each one, and then I'm going to really show you where people tend to get stuck so that doesn't happen to you. So the first step, and a lot of you may guess this, is to set your starting macros, and I put in parentheses, the right way. Now, if you're brand new to this, when I say set your macros, I mean figure out how much of each of the macronutrients you're eating each day: protein, fat, and carbs. And you set targets for these. So it's like having daily targets instead of just like freaking winging it every single day. And everybody wants to know how to set their macros. This is like one of the questions that I get the most. How do I set my macros? But here's what I've learned after working with over 10,000 women. You guys keep asking for the destination without knowing your starting point. Y'all are trying to run before you walk. You're aiming for those perfect numbers for your body, and it's the wrong focus. So everybody wants to know how to set their macros, but the problem isn't that setting macros is complicated. It's actually not that complicated to do. The problem is that you're skipping the groundwork that will make those numbers work. This is it. This is the mistake that I see so many people making. So instead of just jumping straight into setting your macros, I'm gonna walk you through the 4 pieces of groundwork that you need to nail first before you ever decide to go and start to set your macros. Because when you get the foundation right, the macro calculation is the easy part. So I see a lot of people making the same mistakes. Number 1 is not mastering the skill of tracking first, okay? Now, I'm gonna say something and I'm gonna say it with my full chest. If you are not comfortable tracking your food without any targets, you're not ready to set your macros. I said it, my full chest, okay? Otherwise, it's like trying to learn fractions without knowing basic addition and subtraction. And so I see a lot of people jumping straight into trying to hit their macro targets without mastering the fundamentals of accurately just tracking your food and building that as a skill. And then you wonder why you can't be consistent. It's because you're trying to do advanced math when you haven't learned to count yet. So do not set your macros until you feel comfortable tracking just in general, just the skill of tracking. Number 2 is setting your macros, which I'm gonna call your destination, where you wanna go, with no awareness of where you've been. A lot of you are setting your macro goals without tracking your normal intake first. Right? It's like if you're gonna plug something into a GPS, it needs 2 things. It needs where you're gonna go and where you are now. And a lot of you guys are trying to plug in a destination without understanding where you're currently at. There's no way to be able to close that gap. So this is a step that will make such a difference in being able to set better macro targets for yourself. Okay, foundation number 3, and a mistake that I see a lot of people making, is picking the wrong phase. Now, if I pressed most people and I asked them about phases, they would say, oh yeah, there's 2 phases, Amber. There's on a diet, off a diet. Right? Those are the 2 phases. Wrong. There are actually 4 phases, and getting the phase right for whatever your goal is and whatever your history is and whatever your body is doing is vital for you getting results. So the 4 phases are cut. This is the one that probably most people are familiar with, where you eat fewer calories than you burn in order to lose fat. This is the one that everyone's like, yes, that one, please, and thank you. There's 3 others though. There's a reverse, also known as a reverse diet, and this is where you're gradually increasing your calories to heal your metabolism after long periods of dieting or being in a caloric deficit or under eating. Then we have maintenance, where you're eating enough to maintain your weight while also supporting your workouts and your recovery. We'll talk about reversing and maintenance towards the end of today's training, because these are 2 phases that a lot of people miss, and they're infinitely important in your long-term results. And then we have a bulk, which is where you're eating in a caloric surplus while lifting weights to build as much muscle mass as possible. So those are the 4 phases. And when I share those with people, most of you guys automatically say, oh, well, I need a cut because I want to lose fat. But I would say for maybe half of you, a cut actually isn't the right starting phase. Many of you are metaphorically like a car stuck in a snowbank. Stay with me on this one. So if you get your car stuck in a snowbank and you sit there and you press on the gas, what happens? The wheels just spin. Doesn't matter how hard you press on the gas. It doesn't matter how much effort you put into pressing on the gas. The wheels are just spinning. And this is a lot of you. You're putting a lot of effort in. You're trying really hard. And you feel like your wheels are just spinning. If you're sitting in the car and you're stuck in a snowbank, you know inherently that just pushing on the gas isn't going to get you anywhere. What do you got to do? You got to get your butt out of your car. You got to go grab the sandbags. You got to put the sandbags in the car. And now with that extra weight, now the gas pedal is going to start to work and you can get out of the snowbank. This is the concept of reverse dieting. This is the concept of spending time in maintenance. Y'all think the reason people kind of fight me on this is because they think, oh, it's going to take so much longer. You know what takes you a really long time is sitting in the snowbank just pushing the gas and spinning the wheels and not going anywhere. So yeah, you're gonna have to do something different. You may need to start in a different phase than you think that you need to start in. But that is what's going to allow your gas pedal, all the effort that you're putting in, it's going to allow that gas pedal to actually work. So for a lot of you, when you keep trying to cut, when that's not the right phase for you, you're gonna get stuck and frustrated, and you're gonna end up putting a whole lot of effort in without a lot of results. And there's some of you that shouldn't even be focused on fat loss right now. Like, you need to be focused on building muscle. So this is why picking the right phase is pivotal for your success, and it's why a lot of people stay stuck thinking they need to cut when that's the wrong phase for you. Okay, number 4 is prioritizing optimal instead of sustainable. Now, you probably remember this image that I showed you during training 2, where we have the 2 ladders on the right. The rungs are spaced very far apart. The person on the bottom can't even reach that first rung. And on the left, the rungs are spaced together and the person's at the top. So I see a lot of people setting their calories, setting their macros in ways that are unattainable or unreachable for them. Right? You do it because you plug your numbers into a calculator, and the calculator says you're supposed to eat 1,200 calories and 140 grams of protein. And you're like, bet, let's do it. I'm in. And then you start trying to eat 1,200 calories and 140 grams of protein, and you're like the person standing at the bottom of the rung, not even able to reach it. Friend, your body and your brain cannot handle that kind of shock, that kind of swing. And so your body thinks you're starving, it fights back, it makes you more hungry, you end up binging, and then you wonder why macro counting works for everybody else but not for you. It's because you focused on optimal versus sustainable. And I say to my macros one-on-one clients all the time, sustainable beats optimal every time. And in fact, I would even adjust this, and I would say, sustainable is optimal. What can I be consistent with? And this is why knowing where you've been first before setting those targets is so incredibly important. So those are the biggest mistakes that I see with women, not creating a foundation of success before they go on to setting their starting macros. Now, I could walk you through all of these mistakes and the nuance of these and how to move through them and how to apply this to your journey, but that's exactly what I do in the first module of Macros 101. What I want to focus on is the next step, because this is where the rubber hits the road. This is the single biggest reason why people start to struggle with macro counting. It's, you got to get the setting your macros right, but then now, step number 2, we got to freaking turn that into food. So how do I, now that I have these macro goals, how do I turn them into food? And then the key piece, without turning it into a diet. Because this is what I see. People get their numbers, and now they've just created this box of restriction around themselves. Now I have to hit them. I have to hit these numbers. And if I'm not gonna hit them, then I'm not gonna be successful. And so, you can see how it really quickly pushes you into that perfection mindset and that dieter mentality. So how do we bridge this? How do we manage this of building some consistency, but also not putting ourselves into this dieter box? One of the things that I talk with my clients a lot about is how a lot of people spend a lot of time focusing on what to eat. What to eat is important. I'm not gonna say it's not. But I think you spend too much time obsessing over what to eat when the real skill is how you decide what to eat. That's the skill. And when you clean up the how, that decision-making process, the what fixes itself. And I've seen this time and time again, that when we clean up that decision-making process, we get you out of that dieter mindset, we get you into a scientist mindset, then the what takes care of itself. Many of you are still looking for external rules to follow, instead of learning to make good decisions for yourself. You want me to tell you what to eat, or you want your macros to tell you what to eat, or you want a diet to tell you what to eat so that you don't have to think. I get it. It feels easier, but it keeps you dependent. It keeps you anxious around food. It keeps you in that perfectionistic mindset. It keeps you in that dieter mindset. As a coach, I care way more about how you're deciding what to eat than what you actually eat, because you can eat broccoli from a very restricted mindset. Or you can eat cake from a very in control, empowered mindset, if you're making the choice from the right place. So I care less about if you're eating the broccoli or the cake, and I care more about helping you to learn how you're making those decisions so that it can come from a really empowered place for you. Now, You do need some consistency because we're going to talk about in step 3 how we start to utilize data and feedback to be able to guide us in this journey. So we're going to talk about that. But I want to make the point, because this step is a lot about building consistency. When I'm helping people go from their macros to now what do I eat, it's a lot about building consistency, again, so the data makes sense. But consistency built on following rules, which is where a lot of people try to build consistency from just following the rules. That will always crumble. It will always crumble. It's like building on sand. You need to build consistency, because consistency is important. We're going to talk about it in step 3, but you need consistency, but you need it built from internal choice. And that is an entirely different skill that a lot of you have yet to develop, because you've been trying to build consistency on rules. Consistency built from choice, it's a game changer, but it is a different skill. Learning to be a good decision maker instead of a good rule follower. This is a process that I guide my clients through because it makes such a difference in the long run. Okay, so step number 3, once we have some consistency, now we can get into the really exciting part of really starting to pair with your body. And this is where you're learning how to make data-driven adjustments without panicking, okay? Because this is where a lot of people do, is they step on the scale and they panic, and then they don't know what to do, or they change everything, or they're lost, or they just quit, right? There's just like this moment of panic, and then I don't know what to do, and then I'm done. This step is where we really get to put our scientist hat on, and where we really get to link arms with our body. This is the piece I love because it helps people to learn to understand their unique body. Now, I shared this graphic on the last training. We talked about everybody has a black box. Your black box may be perimenopausal. Your black box may have 17 children. Your black box may be a full-time working mother, right? We all have black boxes. Our bodies are all different. But when we we pay attention to what we're consistently putting into the black box and the output that black box is popping out, and we have consistency with that input, now we can start to link the two. We can say, when I put this into my body, this is the output that I get. And now we can start to put our scientist hat on, and we can run experiments with our body, and we can pair with our body. We can sort of understand our body. That, hey, when maybe if we put a little different input in, we get a little different output in, or output out, right? This is like the key to a lot of the things that I teach, and why macro counting can really help you customize something for your body and get to learn and understand your body. So there's this cycle that I teach, and it's very similar to the scientific method, where we need some consistency first. This is why step 2 is so important, because we do need to build some consistency, right? If you have a black box and you are consistently putting the same input in, now I can make some analysis about the output. But if the input into the black box is very inconsistent, it's a lot harder for me to read the data that's coming out, and I can't make as good of analyses about what's going on in the black box. So we need to develop some consistency, but we need to do that from a choice framework, not from a rules-based framework, right? We talked about that in step 2. Once we have that consistency, then we're going to gather a bunch of data from our body, so that's the output piece. So we can then look at it. We can analyze the data. This is the process that I teach my clients. How do we gather the right pieces of data, and then how do we analyze it? And then from there, how do we make tweaks? This is when we go from just a generic diet to what works for Nicole, for what works for Jessica, for what works for Pam. Because this is the process that I teach my clients. How do you look at your data, your body's feedback, and now how do we come from a scientist mindset to understand that data and make adjustments, make tweaks? You may notice that I said step 1 was setting your what? Starting macros. Because your starting macros are not your finishing macros. They are just a place to start. But then as you get data and feedback from your body, now you can adjust those macros. Now you can adjust what you're doing in the gym to be able to produce the output, the results that you want. So a lot of you struggle with that first step, that consistency step. Like the number of people who I know are good Monday through Friday and then struggle every single weekend, right? That's a very common pattern, right? We're not building that consistency. And if you don't have consistency, you don't have good data. If you don't have good data, you don't know how to adjust anything that you're doing, okay? But here's what I want you to understand is when you step on the scale or when you do measurements, a lot of times people feel like it's a report card. Like it is like good or bad, or you're failing if you're not moving in the direction that you want to be moving. But I really want to reframe that into you're never failing. Your body is simply giving you feedback. Up until this point, most of you have no idea how to listen to that. Everyone's like, listen to your body. And you're like, what the frick does that mean? I don't even know how to listen to my body. Well, that's because you don't know how to read the data. You don't know how to read the feedback, and you don't know what to do with it. So a couple of mistakes that I see people making when we start to get to this piece about making adjustments, tweaking what it is that you're doing to make it more effective. The first mistake I see people make is you're not giving the process nearly enough time. So I love the analogy of a seed. When you plant a seed, it does not sprout the day that you planted it. And so you plant that seed, and then you take your watering can and you water dirt. You're not watering a plant yet. You're just watering dirt, acting as if that plant is going to grow. You're just trusting the process. But a lot of you are planting the seed and then freaking digging up the seed 3 days later and then wondering why your seed isn't sprouting. There is an element of waiting, an element of plant it and wait for the seed to grow. Now, we got to contrast this with what our brain needs, because I know that results are helpful to your brain, right? I hear this over and over, like it's reassuring to my brain. If I know that it's working, I can keep going. But when I'm in that limbo of I don't know if this is working or not, it's hard to keep going. So listen, we got to water the dirt for a while. Progress takes time. And being impatient isn't going to make it go any faster. It only causes you guys to stop. It only causes you to start over, and stop watering, which makes certain the seed is not going to sprout. So then the question becomes, okay, but how long do I have to wait, Amber? Because I don't want to wait forever. Because what if I'm on the wrong path, right? I would like to know that I'm on the wrong path sooner rather than later so that I can do something else. So my recommendation to my Macros 101 clients is you need at least 2 weeks of consistent data before you can make any conclusions. 2 weeks is a good amount of time. If the seed hasn't sprouted in 2 weeks, okay, of 2 weeks of consistent data, right? This is 2 weeks of watering it every day. After 2 weeks, now we have some good data, some good solid data and feedback from your body, and now we can answer that question, is it working or is it not? One of two things is gonna happen. It's working, whew, okay, I can just keep going, I can continue to trust the process. Or it's not working, that's not failure, that's feedback. Now what am I going to tweak and adjust and change and be able to move forward? So we're making those tweaks. We're not just saying, well, just keep trusting the process. We're saying, okay, we got 2 weeks of data. I have this feedback. I need to make a tweak. And then I help you make that tweak, and then you keep going. So that's that balance between trusting the process, which everybody says, and like actually knowing whether this is working or not so that you can make tweaks and changes. Number 2, you're not giving the process enough consistency. Be honest with yourself. A lot of you can say that I've been doing this a long time, but are you doing it consistently? And is your consistency based off of choice, not rules and restriction? So again, we need 2 full weeks of consistency. When we look at this cycle, 2 full weeks of consistency. You're gathering data for at least 2 weeks. You're consistent with your input for at least 2 weeks so that we can look at that data and make analyses about what's working. The next mistake that I see a lot of people making is that you're reading the wrong data points. And a lot of people are just looking at the scale. We already have acknowledged that that's an incomplete data point. And I think about, remember back when you were in middle school and you like graphed scatter plots? That ringing a bell? Right, if you have a scatter plot graph and you have like 1 or 2 dots, it's very hard to know what the trend is. You can't really draw a line anywhere. Whereas if you have a lot of data points, now the trend starts to show up and we can see what's going on. And so this is a lot of the things that you need to be doing with your body is you cannot be just looking at one data point. You cannot just be looking at the scale. We need to look at all of the data points and be able to read and analyze and figure out what is my body telling me? Because your body's telling you something, you just don't know how to read it yet. And that's a skill. And then the last mistake that I see people making is once you have that consistency, once you have that data, and once you have that feedback, you don't know what to do with it. Yeah, April even said it in the chat. She said, I'm very consistent. I just don't know how or what to tweak to get the results I'm after. Yeah, that's the next step. It's like once we have the consistency, once we have the data, once we have the analysis, then there's a very step-by-step process that I take my clients through to figure out, okay, what are we going to adjust? How long are we going to adjust it? What are we going to do, moving forward? That is the process. That is that step-by-step process to be able to work alongside with your body to get the results that you want. This step 3 of making data-driven adjustments is really where you start to understand your body. You respond to your body. You customize and figure out what's going to work with your body. Your body is giving you feedback. You just don't know what to do with it. You don't know how to read it, and you don't know what to do with that information. That is a lot of what I teach my clients. This is the physical part of the transformation, is figuring out what does your body need in terms of nutrition, workouts, movement, etc. And you learn how to read your body's feedback and make strategic adjustments instead of panic-driven ones. All right, number 4. We also, that's all the physical stuff, right? But number 4 is we also simultaneously need to address your hidden fears so that we can beat self-sabotage. This is a piece that a lot of people completely overlook. And they really struggle with building that consistency. They struggle with getting results for a while and then losing them. You're likely familiar with self-sabotage. I define it as, I have a goal, I know what to do to reach that goal, and yet I don't do it. Or I do it for a while and then I quit. Show of hands, 1 in the chat. How many of you ever have wondered what's wrong with you? It's like, I know I need to do this, but I can't make myself do it. Yeah. It's like, first of all, welcome to being human. That is a very human tendency, which we're going to talk about. But we're also going to talk about why it is and how we start to break out of it. The thing I need you to internalize is that you're not broken and you are not lazy. Yeah, the ones that just keep coming in. You are human with a human pattern and a human brain. And every human brain has mental blocks. Every single one. It's not your choice whether you have mental blocks or not. We all have them, but it is your choice if you address them or not. So I often, when I'm talking about mental blocks, I refer to them as spinach in your teeth. And this is a true story. I've been using this analogy for years, but then I did a Instagram Live, true story. I ate a kale salad before I did this, and I literally did a 34-minute live with kale in my teeth the entire time. Had no idea it was there. No idea. Same thing with spinach, or with mental blocks. They're like spinach or kale in between your teeth. You can't see them. I could not see it, right? But someone looking at me, they could see it. And so what's really important to understand about mental blocks is that trying to figure out your own mental blocks is like trying to see the back of your head. Like, it's impossible. We all have them, but it's really hard for us to see our own mental blocks. It's physically impossible to see the back of your head without a mirror. And that mirror is what a good coach provides you. I can't see my own mental blocks. I have my own coaches to spot out my mental blocks. Now, mental blocks, another analogy I use a lot is that of a weed. Because imagine you had a front lawn with a bunch of dandelions. So a bunch of dandelions pop up, and you're like, I know how to solve it. I'm going to get out my mower, and I'm going to mow down those dandelions. And then you step back, and you're like, dang, I did a good job. Dandelions gone. What's going to happen 2 weeks later? Well, the dandelions are going to come back. Why? Because you didn't pull out the roots. Those weeds are just going to grow back. And this is the experience that a lot of you have. It's the reason that you keep starting and stopping. It's the reason that you don't follow through, because you're addressing the behaviors. That's what you can see. You can see yourself not tracking. You can see yourself struggling on the weekends. You can see yourself not following through. And so that's what you try to address. You try to address the behaviors, which is like trying to mow down the dandelion. Versus what actually is going to solve it is if we go underneath and we go to the root. And we get the root of what's causing those self-sabotaging behaviors. Now again, the root is you can't see it with the naked eye. It's under the surface. And so this is why a lot of programs really focus on the what do you do, what do you do, what do you do, what do you change, what's the behavior, what's the behavior? It's like mowing down the lawn. If you don't address the roots, they're just going to come back. And this is why a lot of you have that pattern of self-sabotage and starting and stopping, because we haven't addressed the roots. So this is what step 4 is all about, is starting to bring awareness to, starting to reflect back to you that mirror of some of these blocks. Now, some of the ones that I coach a lot of clients through, fear of failure. In fact, if you caught yesterday's bonus coaching call, the first conversation I had was about how do we work through fear of failure. Fear of success. That's another big one. Coaching through what happens if I succeed? What if I can't maintain it? What if people treat me differently or I have different relationships? Perfectionism is a huge one. Comparison. We all know we're not supposed to compare, and yet our brain does. People struggling with self-worth, putting everybody else in front of yourself, that like selflessness. I actually coached on this one yesterday as well. But every single one of these roots has the same effect. They make you quit before you even give yourself a chance to succeed. Or you succeed and then you lose it. Because those blocks will always pull you back. The roots will always pull you back unless you address them. So why do we freaking have these mental blocks? Why? It seems so silly. Like, I should just let go of these mental blocks. We need to have some compassion, because self-sabotage is not trying to hurt you. Your brain is not trying to hurt you. Your brain is trying to protect you. Your brain cares more about your safety than your success. And so what it did was it created those blocks for a reason. It created them to keep you safe. If you have a fear of failure, at some point your brain probably learned that failing was dangerous. And it made you unsafe. Maybe emotionally, maybe socially, maybe in your family. So then what your brain does is it creates this block to protect you, to make sure that that doesn't ever happen again, so that you quit before you can ever fail. So it keeps you safe. The problem is it also prevents you from the success you want. And so in macro counting, I see self-sabotage show up in very predictable ways. The perfectionist quits the moment they can't track something perfectly, or if they're going to go over. The people pleaser can't say no to food pushers and then feels guilty about it. The all or nothing woman has one bad day and throws it out the rest of the week, or the weekend usually. These aren't character flaws. These are patterns with roots. And finding and clearing these invisible blocks, like, you cannot Google this kind of crap. Like, you can't figure it out from a Facebook group. It's part of that section of knowledge that you didn't know. We're blind to our own mental blocks. And so it requires someone who's trained to see them and be able to reflect them back to you. If you were on the coaching call yesterday, you saw this in practice. You saw me coach 2 very different women through some of their struggles of getting results, and how I was able to reflect back to them some of the things that they didn't even see in themselves. This is deep work that I do with my clients to be able to help them not only get success the first time, but hold on to it in the long run. Because then we come to step number 5, which is maintaining your results. Some of you are coming to this experience having lost weight and regained it, maybe multiple times. Right? So it's not even like that the losing it's hard, it's the maintaining that is challenging. And nobody tells you that maintaining your results is a different skill than losing. So for those of you who had that experience of having some sort of result and then losing it, there's usually one of 3 reasons that I see this happen with clients. The first one is it relates back to step 4. You had some sort of physical transformation, but the mental transformation was lacking. You're able to push that physical transformation, but if you don't catch up the mental side of things, your brain's always going to pull you back. It always pulls you back to safety. It always pulls you back to security. So yeah, you can create a physical transformation by muscling it, by efforting it, by following the rules, but it won't stick, because your brain is always going to pull you back. So that's a big one. The second reason that I see people regain is that you achieved an attainable physique, which is not the same as an easily maintainable physique. And this is a big one. And this is going to be different for everybody. What is attainable, what you can hit with your body, and what you can easily, with a life you want to live, be able to maintain. And so sometimes people struggle with that. It's like, I hit this number, but I couldn't keep it. And you have to ask yourself the question, am I willing to, change my lifestyle in a way that I have to be a lot more strict in order to keep it, or do I want an easily maintainable physique? No right choice, but that's a big one that I see people struggle with. And then the second one, or the third one, is that, and this is what I'm going to talk about in this step, is you didn't spend enough time in the other phases. So the phases of reverse dieting and intentional maintenance. A lot of people go from a cut and then they don't know what to do next. And if you don't spend time in that reverse diet phase and in intentional maintenance, that weight regain is almost certainly going to happen. And the reason comes back to what is called metabolic adaptation. When you're in a caloric deficit, your metabolism adapts. It's part of keeping your body alive. Like, this is a process that is not good or bad, it just is. It's a way your body keeps you alive. And I like to use the analogy of a fire. If you think about your metabolism, how many calories you're burning a day, like a fire, if you start going through a caloric deficit, that's like removing logs from the fire. What's going to happen over time to that fire? It's going to shrink, right? It's going to be smaller. It's going to burn smaller. It's a little bit to conserve energy. It doesn't want to burn out. And so then people do that process, and then they reach their goal weight, and then what do? Yippee! I finally reached my goal weight. And they take a whole bunch of logs and they throw them onto the fire, and then they wonder why the fire goes and poops out, right? And it's because you had this little tiny fire and you smothered it with a whole bunch of food, and that is just going to cause weight regain very, very quickly. So the solution is reverse dieting, where you're slowly adding logs back onto the fire one at a time until it's burning strong enough again. But this process requires patience and strategy, because a lot of you guys are walking around with your brain and you have decided that less food equals better. Lower calories equals results. And so then when someone like me comes along and says, you actually need to eat more food, you're like, whoa, Amber, that doesn't fit with my way of thinking. I know. But the payoff is huge. I've had clients who go through reverses go from anywhere from eating 400 more calories a day to 1,500 more calories per day and not gain a single pound of fat. I know some of you are like, just had a mind blown moment, right? Amy said that seems so backward to me. Eat more rather than less. But remember the analogy of the snow, the car stuck in the snow. Y'all are pushing on the pedal and it's not going anywhere. And that is because you don't need to eat less. You counterintuitively need to actually eat more. It's counterintuitive, I know, but it works, okay? You have to work with your metabolism instead of fighting against it. Now, reverse dieting gets your metabolism back healthier. It gets you eating more food. That's the first part. That's the first half. But during a reverse, you're still being very intentional. You're still tracking your food, you're still increasing calories, you're watching your body's response, you're tracking your data, you're staying consistent. And then the next phase that comes after that is maintenance. And there are different skills that you learn in maintenance than when you're in a deficit. Because now maintenance is about keeping your weight stable, having more flexibility, dealing with abundance of food. So I really think it's important to understand that maintaining your results, completely different skill than losing weight. And it's a skill most of you lack. I would say 95% of the women that I work with lack this skill. And it is a vital skill to long-term results. Because here's what I see happen with a lot of women. There's a voice in the back of your head that says, you're doing this, but you're not going to be able to maintain it. Yeah, maybe you'll lose 30 pounds, but you really think that you're going to be able to keep it off long term? And if you don't believe that you can maintain your weight loss, you will self-sabotage before you even get there. Your brain thinks like, why am I putting myself through this difficult process if I'm just going to regain anyway? So you might as well quit early. Solve that problem. So a lot of you don't actually believe that you can maintain your results long term because you've literally never done it before. Most women that I work with have never said, you know what, for the next 3 months, I'm going to eat 1,900 calories and I'm going to maintain my weight where I am. Most of you have never done that. But doing that and developing that skill builds that confidence that you can not only lose it, but that you can maintain it long term. And that is exactly why reverse dieting is not optional. Maintenance is not optional. And reverse dieting maintenance is not something that you just do when you reach your goal. This is what a lot of people think that it looks like. They think it looks like, let me get my slide deck, there it is. They think this is the process to get to their goal. I just need to set a goal weight, and then I cut until I get there, and then I'll worry about that reverse maintenance stuff that Amber's talking about. Wrong. Wrong. Because what the process actually looks like is much more cyclical. There's a reason that there's 4 phases, and most people need to cycle through all of them more frequently than you think. So you may do a cut. You're not to your goal weight yet. You do a reverse. You practice maintenance. You practice the skill of maintenance. You go through another cut. You spend more time at maintenance. Maybe you go and build muscle, then you spend more time at maintenance. And so the process is much more circular than people often realize. Now this may seem complicated, but it really isn't. There's a cycle to it. And I walk my clients through like mapping out an entire next year, so you know what cycles you're going to rotate through, so that you are actually learning all the skills you need to learn to not only lose the weight, but to keep it off long term. It's a very different process. Now, maybe you're feeling a little bit excited. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit excited. I'm gonna go back to the chat so I can see it. There we go, yeah. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit excited, but there might be a tinge of overwhelm. That's very normal, right? You're excited because, okay, this makes a lot of sense. Like, I'm understanding this, I'm grasping this. But then maybe there's a little bit of overwhelm because, holy crap, that's a lot of steps and that's a lot of nuance. You're right. But here's what I want you to notice. I want you to look back and I want you to think about how much you've learned over just the last 3 trainings, right? You understand your body isn't broken. You understand that the scale doesn't tell you the whole story. You understand why you've been stuck in compliance and defiance, why it's felt so hard to stick to something, even though you logically know that you want to stick to it. This is exactly what needs to happen. These skills are what you need to develop in order to be able to be successful. And these skills are what I call being a macro scientist. So what did it take over the last 3 trainings? It took your willingness to show up. Pat yourself on the back for that. Even being here on the last day, not everybody is. That was a willingness to show up. There was a willingness to empty your cup, like I asked you to do in training 1, and to just allow me to teach you in a way that maybe wasn't what you were planning on, but was exactly what you needed. And it was somebody like me guiding you through the steps, teaching you the things that you didn't know that you didn't know. This transformation, whatever this experience that you've had over the last week plus, didn't happen by accident. It happened because you were coachable. Because you were coachable. And being coachable makes all of the difference, especially when you have the right coach. So let me recap those 5 steps because it probably felt a little overwhelming. So let's put it all together, okay? So let's recap it a little bit of what we covered today. The first step we talked about was setting your starting macros. And we talked about all the mistakes that a lot of people make before they even dive into this step. Then we talked about, okay, now we have those numbers, we gotta turn them into food without turning it into a diet. So we focus on how we make those decisions and coming from a choice paradigm versus a restriction or a rules-based paradigm. Then we talk about making data-driven adjustments. This is where we really partner with your body. We really figure out your body. When do we need to adjust macros? When do we need to adjust your workouts? When do we need to tweak other things to be able to make it more effective? This is where the data really starts to guide us and teach you about your body. Then we talked about addressing your hidden fears and that mental aspect so that this is not just a flash in the pan. There's an internal transformation to match the external transformation. And then maintain your results. We talked about how do we not just hit the number, but maintain it long term. And we talked about reverse dieting and practicing the skill of maintenance so that you can do this long term. When you step into that identity of the macro scientist, it equals something incredible. Now, many of you were on the coaching call that I did yesterday with Cheryl and Laura. They were fantastic. Thank you guys so much for being the guinea pigs and putting it out there. It was really helpful to a lot of women. But yesterday, I was working with Laura on some of her mental blocks. I know Laura's on the call because I saw her in the chat. And there was just this like moment that I got chills. And I don't know if any of you guys experienced the same thing when you were live on the call, but I'm going to play the clip for you right here. Something amazing happened when we got to the point of the coaching conversation where I was asking her, I was showing her some of the patterns that she wasn't quite aware of. I was showing her some of the mental blocks. I was being that mirror for her. And I asked her a really important question. I said, Laura, what is on the other side of these changes that we're talking about, that I'm asking you to make? And her response, like, I actually just got goosebumps. Like, her response was just chef's kiss. So I'm gonna play that for you now.
Laura, when you let go of this, when you start to do things for yourself, when you take the backpacks that's yours and give everybody else their backpacks back, what is on the other side of that?
Freedom.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I just got chills again. Because what's on the other side of some of the things that you need to change, some of the things, the skills you need to learn, what's on the other side of that is freedom. Freedom from starting and stopping. Freedom from wondering if you're doing it right. Freedom from depending on somebody else. Freedom from the doubts that you have about what you're capable of. You can become the expert on your own body. And these are the steps. And now it's time to take them and apply them to your very real, messy life. And I've lived this out in real life. I have 4 kids, and I've taught 2 of them now to drive. So that was fun. 2 down, 2 to go. But both of my kids, they aced their written driver's test. They knew all the concepts. But I will tell you, having been their parent the first time that they got behind the wheel, boy, did they have a lot to still learn once they got behind the wheel. Because in driver's ed, they learned like the theory. They learned, here's the steps to parallel park. But y'all know that the steps to parallel park are very easy to understand, and then you get into the car and you try to parallel park, and it's a lot harder. So my kids were really happy to have me in the driver's seat, being able to guide them through that experience when, you know, they're trying to drive the car for the first time. It's the same thing with these concepts that I've taught you over the last 3 trainings. You've had the aha moments. You've resonated with what I've taught. It makes logical sense. You have the steps. But the next step is getting into the car, and you may realize that navigating your relationship with food, navigating the relationship with your body, it's a little bit more complicated than just the steps that you learn. That's the messy part. That's the action part. You know, what do you do when you're stressed? What do you do when the scale doesn't move for 2 weeks? What do you do when your brain starts panicking during a reverse? What do you do when you start reverting back to that diet mentality that's so easy to fall into? That's when you need somebody in the passenger seat. At this point, you've shown up to 3 trainings. You've invested time learning this information. You're here because you want to change, you refuse to give up, and that matters. You keep trying, you keep learning, you keep showing up for yourself. And that's not small, that takes courage. And it also shows me that you're ready. You're ready to stop being the passenger in your own life. You're ready to learn, step into that driver's seat and learn to drive your own body with confidence. And that is why I created Macros 101. Because I want to be able to be your coach in the passenger seat. I'm not driving the car. You're driving the car. But I'm going to be right there with you through every step of it, so that you can learn to drive your body and have support through it. And just like my goal with my kids, like for a long time, I drove my kids around. And then they got to the point where it's like, okay, now you sit in the driver's seat, I'm gonna sit in the passenger seat, and I'll help you. But that wasn't the end goal. The end goal was to get my kids confident enough to drive on their own, and that is my goal with you. I'm not here to be your mentor forever. I don't want to be your coach forever. Because I'm not the expert on your body. I want you to be the expert on your body. I'm just going to teach you how to be your own coach. So Macros 101 is not just another course where I like dump a bunch of videos on you and then I'm like, peace out, good luck. And it's also not like crazy expensive one-on-one coaching where you're paying thousands just to like ask random questions. It's both. It's a hybrid. So you do get a complete curriculum. So each of those 5 steps that I talked about today, it's its own full training module. So I teach you all the steps. I teach you all the nuance. I teach you how to apply this to your journey. And you also get personalized coaching while you're implementing everything, so that you're not trying to drive the car the first time without someone in the passenger seat. And so what really sets Macros 101 apart, and you've probably realized it by now, is that I address both the physical and the mental. Most plans address the physical, right? They'll give you a meal plan, they'll give you macros, call it a day, but they don't really talk to you about how do you ignore that voice in your head that's telling you that this won't work, or you don't deserve this, or you're just gonna mess it up all anyway, right? You can have the perfect plan, you can have the perfect macros, but if you're restricting yourself into compliance and you're still carrying around those mental blocks, you're not gonna be successful long-term. You will eventually self-sabotage. And so that's why we do both. There is a lot about the physical and figuring out your body. And there's a lot about the mental, right? And some of you are like, Amber, I don't really need the mental stuff. That's for other people. That's fine. Yes, Macros 101 is going to teach you all the science. It's going to teach you how to set your macros, adjust them, when to adjust them, how to do it, how to use macro counting to reach your goals, how to cycle through the phases, how to do a reverse diet, how to do maintenance. Like, you're going to learn all the sciencey physical stuff. And throughout it, you might realize that you need a little bit more of the mental stuff than maybe you originally thought. So we cover that as well. The content, I bake a lot of mental work into the content because that's what allows the physical transformation to stick. And then a big part of Macros 101 is the coaching. So that I can help you with the physical questions. How do I adjust my macros? When do I adjust my macros? What is my data telling you? Cool, we'll coach through that. And we're gonna coach through the mental questions, right? Both. How do I read my data? How do I make adjustments? I know the concepts, but what do I do in my own journey? Cool, we'll coach you. How do I stay consistent? How do I stop going on and off on weekends? Cool, we'll coach you through both. So how does the coaching actually work? We have 2 ways to be able to get coaching inside of Macros 101. For every week, for 8 weeks, you can attend live coaching calls. If you attended the call yesterday, that's a very great example of what a live coaching call looks like. They're life-changing. Because whether you're getting coached, like Cheryl and Laura did yesterday, or whether you're just listening to Cheryl and Laura get coached, what you will notice is that you will have aha moments that are very applicable to you. Because we as humans, we tend to get stuck in the same places. And it's almost easier for us to see patterns in other people, right? It's easier to see mental blocks in other people than it is to see it in ourselves. But when we see it in other people, we can start to address it in ourselves as well. So live coaching is amazing. I love doing live coaching. It's one of the coolest things that we do in Macros 101. But I don't want you to have to wait for a live call to get an answer to a question that you have. So we have a 24/7 forum where you can post any question that you have at any point, and a real coach, this is not like the blind leading the blind, a real coach is going to answer your specific question. We're going to help you to have that next step because you're going to have questions. Just like my kids knew all of the steps of how to parallel park, but the moment they were actually parallel parking, they still had a lot of questions, and I was able to help and guide them. Now, I know what maybe some of you are thinking. You're like, this sounds amazing, Amber. This has been an amazing experience, but you're about to tell me that it costs $3,000 and I gotta sell a kidney. No. The investment for everything in Macros 101 is 2 payments of $255. Now, here's the thing about value. $255 is expensive for a candy bar, and it's very cheap for a new car, right? What it depends on is what you're getting. And so it's very easy to look at Macros 101 and be like, I'm getting a program and I'm getting coaching. Yes, and you're getting the skills to manage your own body. You're getting the skills to be able to become your own coach. You're getting the skills to be able to eat and train for the rest of your life or whatever goals you have set. You're learning how to drive your own car. You're getting freedom from the diet cycle. You're learning to trust yourself around food. You're learning to become an example for your kids and for your grandkids to see. Now, for some of you, it's not even about the money. That's like not even the thing that comes up. It's about the fear. And I want to speak to that for a minute because a lot of you feel like you're having deja vu. You're like, I've been here before, Amber. I got all fired up. I got excited, I found a program, I'm like, this is it, this is the one. And then 2 weeks later, my motivation wore off, it wasn't as fun anymore, I didn't stick with it, and then I just threw it on the pile of like all the other things that didn't work. And that is why I need you to hear me on this next part. Macros 101 is not magic. But, I mean, you already knew that. It works because I show you how to use the power you already have. I am very clear as a coach, I do not create your success. You do. But nobody has taught you how to actually do it. Everybody wants to take over and they want to drive for you. I don't want to drive for you. I'm going to sit my butt in that passenger seat and you're going to learn how to drive. You're going to learn how to figure out your body. and I'm going to be there and I'm going to support you and I'm going to help you through it. But I don't create success. You create it. But right now, a lot of you are chasing outsourcing decisions to everybody else. You're chasing the next diet. You're chasing the next program because you think it's going to fix you. And so then when a program shows up, it's like, I'll fix you. I'll fix you. You're like, yes. You don't need to be fixed. You are not broken. You are not broken, my friend. What you need to do is to stop doubting yourself. What you need to do is stop letting fear run the show and stop quitting on yourself every time it gets hard. You need to start trusting yourself. And you need someone to teach you how to do it so that you can get out of your own darn way. And when you finally do that, it is game over. Because then the weight comes off. Your body gets fueled. Your health improves. Your kids see a new version of you. You build muscle. You build confidence. You walk into a room like you own it. These are the things that I teach my client. So we started the Diet Rebellion 3 trainings ago. We talked about you trapped in that compliance defiance cycle, following someone else's rules until the soda bottle got to be too much. And we talked about in training 1, 2, how you're preventing yourself from failure by just trying, but that costs you the success you say that you want. Training 2, we learned that your body isn't broken. It just needs the right tool and the right mindset. Not another, turning macro counting into another diet, but really bringing that scientific approach. And then today in training 3, you learn the exact 5-step process to actually start to make that transformation real. But here's what I want you to remember. You likely came to this series as someone who was on a diet or off a diet. And now you're leaving knowing there's a third option. Becoming the scientist of your own body. Becoming the driver of your own body. That is not just a mindset shift. That is a complete identity transformation. From somebody who follows rules to someone who makes decisions. From someone who feels guilty about food, labels food as good and bad, to someone who uses data to guide her own choices. From someone who starts and stops every Monday and then stops on the weekend, to someone who adapts and who knows that failure doesn't exist. It's just feedback. So whether you come and join me inside Macros 101 or not, you have something that you didn't have 3 trainings ago. You have a roadmap. You know the difference between losing weight and losing fat. You know why the scale is an incomplete data point. You know that your metabolism isn't broken, and you know that you need to work with your body and your brain to be able to get the results that you want. And you definitely know that the answer isn't another diet. The answer is learning to work with your body instead of against it. So when I created this series, the Diet Rebellion, you might have been thinking it was just rebelling against diet culture. It's not just that. It's also about rebelling against the idea that you can't trust yourself. It's rebelling against the belief that you need somebody else to tell you what to do, that somebody else is going to fix you or someone else is going to solve you. You don't need that. It's about stepping into your power and becoming the expert on your own body. And that's what we do. That's what I do really well with my clients, is getting them to the place where it becomes the difference maker. You don't have to do this alone. Getting help doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're finally serious about succeeding. So my friend, as we wrap up, you are more powerful than you think. You are not broken. You need the right tool, the right mindset, and the right support to finally learn to trust yourself and to drive your own freaking car. So the rebellion starts now. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to be like, oh, that was really cool. Log that away. That was cool. I learned a lot. Or are you going to start to implement what you learned and start to let it change you? For those of you who are continuing on the journey inside Macros 101 with me, hop in the car, baby. We're going to go. I'm excited. I get to be your coach. I get to sit in the passenger seat as you learn to drive. And as I help you navigate all the nuances of life to be able to utilize this tool and the right mindset to be able to get the results that you want. So thank you to all of you listening here live, listening on the replay, listening on the podcast. Thank you for joining me for the Diet Rebellion series. Here's to never starting over on Monday again. Take care.